I would like to call to order the City of Selma special meeting of July 17, 2023 at 4:00, or actually 4:01. The meeting will be held in person and using teleconference phone number 301-715-8592, ID number 891-6864-5005. When on the phone, if you wish to address council during a public comment portion of the agenda, press *9 to raise your hand, and we will select you from the meeting queue. Press *6 to unmute and mute yourself. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Garrett,
Here.
Councilmember Mendoza Navarro.
Here.
Councilmember Trujillo.
Here. Potential conflict of interest. Does any council member have a potential conflict of interest? If so, you may now identify the item and recuse yourself from discussing and voting on the matter. Agenda changes or deletions. To better accommodate members of the public or inconvenience in order of presentations, items on the agenda may not be presented or acted upon in the order list. Additions to the agenda may be added only pursuant to California Government Code Section 54954.2. B. Oral communications. At this time, any member of the public may address the City Council regarding any item on the special meeting agenda over which the council has jurisdiction. No action or discussion will be taken on any item not on the agenda. Issues raised will be referred to the city manager for review. Members of the public shall limit their remarks to 3 minutes. We will recess to close session to discuss the following: hearing of complaint, charges against public employee discipline / dismissal release, conference with legal counsel regarding 2 existing litigation cases. 1, Christie Meridian versus City of Selma, Fresno County Superior Court Case number 21 CECG 02293. And number 2, Frank Santillan versus City of Selma, City Council, City of Selma, Fresno County Superior Court Case number 21 CECG 00155.
And just to clarify, one part of this is going to be open session because the employee has exercised his right to have it heard in open session. So I can leave it up to you guys how we handle it first, but my suggestion would be that we do the open session portion with the employee first, and then we do the rest of the closed session stuff after that we're gonna do. That way we only have to go into closed session once.
Okay, so we're all okay with that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we'll take the recommendation of our legal counsel. We are reconvening from closed session. City attorney. Oh, this is after the fact, so I don't need to say that anymore.
Yes, and
Okay.
so this is on the hearing of complaint charges against public employee, as well as the public employee discipline and dismissal release. The employee, Mr. Mitchell, is here, and what we can do is give him an opportunity to be heard on the matter first, and then the attorney that represented the city will respond after.
Okay.
You can approach and.
Hello, Selma City Council. And most importantly, the citizens of Selma that are watching this. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everyone who's here and everyone who will be hearing this. My name is Noah Richardson, formerly Noah Mitchell. I was hired by Selma Police Department in June of 2017. My first couple years as a police officer in Selma, I worked tirelessly and selflessly on every single call I ever handled. From homicides, people shot in the head, to suicides, people being hung, to babies dying, to everything, selflessly and with no complaint, ever. I would have literally quite honestly been happy if it was in the line of duty, dying for Selma and the city of Selma, anybody inside of it. After a couple years working patrol, I was promoted to canine handler. I earned the position and received my former partner, Canine Onyx. Canine Onyx was 7 months old when I received her. I trained her along with Jay Brock on narcotics, search and seizure, apprehension, trained her from 7 months until the day I was put on paid leave on May 5th, 2021. So now that I've given you background as to who I was, the first part of my career, now I'm gonna skip forward to January 1st, 2021. So let's do a little recap first. So I was hired in June of 2017. Never one complaint by a citizen, literally never one complaint. Minimal uses of force. I never on one traffic stop had a citizen say, hey, I want to talk to your supervisor. I never had one person contact my supervisor from the community of Selma. I was promoted to K9 and I had a great record going on. Okay. Now on January 1st, 2021, I went to a call. Excuse me, folks, I was informed of this today, so I'm gonna have to take a minute to find a couple things. This is gonna be a general description of what started on January 1st. And this is involved in my complaint. My last complaint is in regards to the Selma Police Department case 21-0007, excuse me. This is related to Fresno County Sheriff's Department IA case 21-009. On this call, Holt instructed me to file false, corrupt felony criminal charges against a female subject without probable cause. Holt demanded these charges be filed approximately 7 days after I first took the report. Holt told me to file criminal charges based on the radio traffic. When I tried to explain to Holt why criminal charges did not apply, he did not listen to me. Holt remained persistent on me filing felony charges related to this case. When I continued to refuse to file criminal charges, Holt threatened to write me up for not complying with his orders. I told Holt that he can write me up, but I refused to file charges against my oath. Holt even told me the criminal charges were to be filed at the directive of the higher-ups. Eventually, my refusal to file false criminal charges against an innocent person landed me in internal affairs. The Selma Police Department based their accusation on Holt's word and radio traffic. So that's where it started. Refusing to file 2 false felony charges against an innocent person. Then from there, I started expressing the desire to file a complaint to then Commander Renee Garza. Renee Garza refused to accept my complaint. And instead what Selma did was they decided to hire Mr. Hines. Now, you would think when a police officer is getting investigated, it would be by a police department or a legitimate agency, but this was done by Mr. Hines. So refused to file the charges. Selma sent me to a retaliatory internal affairs investigation that was conducted by Fresno County Sheriff's Department. After that interview that I had, and not to mention they accused me of 20 policy violations for not filing these wrongful charges. Nobody even talked to me. You know, you have to have probable cause to file criminal charges. In the state of California today, you can't just listen to your superiors. That's what gets you in jail. So I refused to file the charges. They accused me of 20 policy violations, like insubordination for not filing the charges, which their desire from this was to fire me for not following their orders, unlawful orders. Well, unbeknownst to them, I was right. You know, she didn't deserve criminal charges. You know, just because a parolee lives in a house with a firearm doesn't mean you have probable cause to file charges in California today. So I wasn't punished for that case. Once again, in California, you know, that was completely illegal what Holt tried to get me to do. He didn't talk to me. He didn't talk to my partners. He didn't do an investigation. Just 8 days later, file these 2 felony charges, and the charges were felon in possession of a firearm and violate her parole. And I would rather be in the situation I am today, I'm employed, but you know, at the bottom, I would rather be able to hold my head high than file wrongful, illegal charges against an innocent woman. So from there, Selma hired Mr. Hines to do a investigation. Then we'll skip forward to, not to mention, I tried to file a complaint with Garza. He didn't take my complaint, and I've been getting I have thousands of public records, and I'm just finding everything I need in the public records. I just received them. Everything I've been talking about is in the public records that I've just received, so I am reviewing them. He refused to take my complaint. So then I met with former city manager Teresa Galvan in the city chambers right here. I talked to her and I wrote out I talked to her about my complaint. At this time, they had already hired Mr. Hines to cover up my complaint and to terminate me for not following orders. In Selma, you guys need to understand, it's not the pay of the officers. It's not the people that you work around. We love the people. When you have people in authority trying constantly to get you to do illegal things, that's why people leave. That's why your good officers are leaving, not the pay, not the people, the superiors. Okay, so from there, they hire Mr. Hines. Okay, so now we're fast forwarding to May 5th, 2021, Cinco de Mayo. You know, I show up to work and out of nowhere, I get called into an office and they put me on paid administrative leave. They put me through a humiliating process. And they read me a form that I'm getting put on paid leave. Keep in mind, if you study anything to do with public workers, when someone's put on paid leave, it's because they got a DUI. It's because they beat their wife. It's because they ran from the police. It's because they harmed a citizen, because they abused their authority. You will not find any case law where someone was put on leave, paid leave, and put through a humiliating process when I'm not even accused of doing one thing to a citizen in Selma. No crime, perfect record. You'll not find one case in the country where someone is put on leave for what they put me on leave for. Not only did they put me on leave, they, you know, it was a humiliating process. I begged for it to be on recording. We all know we have an $11 million police department. When they went to down my gear, I've watched many videos of officers being put on paid leave and having their gear down. I've seen many videos, you can YouTube them. It's always recorded. When they told me they were gonna put me on leave in one room, we were going to the sergeant's office. I begged for this process to be put on camera. They refused. Separated me from my canine partner, separated me from my job, everything. I begged, and the reason why I was put on leave was so vague. It said the city's investigating your allegations, and it just had a couple broad sentences, not even a direct claim. I bet once I was put on leave, I really started to understand what, wow, my life has been taken from me because I refused to file wrongful charges and I wanted to file a complaint. Really started to sit on me. From there, and all the public records I have, they work together to get together a group of allegations. Like when I was put on leave, I would want to know from the public, when a pedophile or a sex offender or a cop who steals or beats someone gets put on leave, do they then go and check the rounds of their shotguns and check how many bullets are in their gun and find a helmet from 15 years old and accuse them of stealing it and a binder? Who do criminal cops get treated this way? Because not only did they put me on paid leave, put me through a humiliating process, then they went through the vehicle hoping to find something. Citizens of Selma, the only thing they could find was I had 43 or 44 bullets instead of 46 in my gun. I had, instead of having a shotgun fully loaded with 10 rounds in it, I had 5 on the side saddle and it wasn't fully loaded. So once I was on leave, and then the public records show, then they started critiquing me about my computer, the ammunition. Once I was on leave, they worked together to come up with a group of allegations, nothing to do with anything I've ever done to any citizen. This is all retaliation. It's all false claims. That's why will never take a deal, because I can't admit to things that are fake and retaliatory and unlawful. The next case that's really important to my heart that I need to talk about, and this is very serious, folks. Please listen. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is just a couple things from my complaint that I filed with the city. And the city of Selma to this date has said my complaint is baseless. So I just talked about one part of my complaint last, which was me being them attempting to force me to file wrongful charges. This is another situation, another case that was articulated within my complaint. And this case, along with the last that I just discussed, are very important to my heart. Please give me 1 second. I'm sorry. Okay. This is a second case for my complaint that Selma said is baseless, and that's based on Mr. Hines' investigation. This is very important to me, citizens of Selma, seriously. My next complaint is in regards to Selma Police Department case 19-6855. This call for service occurred on October 15th, 2019. This call was regarding a violation of PC 245A2, assault with firearm on person, felony, and PC 246, shooting at an inhabited dwelling, vehicle, etc. This complaint is against Renee Garza and Justin Holt. The level of police corruption involved in this case is profound. Sergeant Garza illegally arrested victims Veronica Almaguer, date of birth 07/24/1978, and Michael Jensen, date of birth 8/12/1987, for unknown crimes. Sergeant Garza directed patrol officers to conduct an illegal safety sweep in violation of the United States Fourth Amendment. Sergeant Garza directed officers to illegally search 3420 Mitchell Avenue without a search warrant, consent, or exigency. Officers illegally confiscated a firearm inside of 3422 Mitchell Avenue. Sergeant Garza directed officers to transport Veronica Almaguer and Michael Jensen to Selma PD in handcuffs under arrest. Garza and Holt pulled me into the sergeant's office early in the morning on 10/16/2019. That's the next day. These corrupt officers tried to pressure me into filing criminal charges against Veronica and Michael to justify Sergeant Garza's illegal arrest. I refused, and Garza said he would articulate his arrest in a report. I quickly removed myself from the situation. So now I'm going to talk about this case. So it was a shooting into a house on Mitchell Avenue. This was when violence was higher. There was a lot of drive-by shootings. And from here, we got a call of a shooting into a house. The house was shot at about 6 times. Michael, Veronica, their 4 children, and a family member were having a barbecue. Michael and his cousin or family member were in the front drinking a beer. Veronica was inside with the kids making food, 3 or 4 kids, when this shooting occurred. Officers arrived on scene quickly. This was my beat that day, so I was the primary officer. We arrived quickly on scene. Initially, Michael was not honest about being a victim of a shooting. That kind of threw it off initially. And what happened was when his house was shot at, he went to his house, went and got his legally owned firearm, and went to protect his house and his kids and his family. And when he saw the cops, he threw his legally owned firearm under his car. So that led to him being detained, which I was okay with. When Veronica heard her husband, and that was because he was scared of the police. He didn't do anything wrong. His house was shot at. He went upstairs, got his legally owned firearm. He went to protect himself. He saw the cops so quickly. He had a buzz. He got scared. He threw his own gun under the garage. Okay. So Veronica hears the disturbance of her husband being detained by the police. She opens the garage door. Then Garza says, "Arrest her, put her in handcuffs." So she's literally just shot at. She doesn't have any criminal record ever. She's never been arrested in her entire life. Her house is shot at while she's making her kids' food inside. Her man and her other family were out front drinking a beer, barbecuing. She's inside with her kids. Shot, her house riddled with bullets. Next thing you know, her husband's being detained. She opens the garage door. Next thing you know, she's in handcuffs. Sergeant Garza directed a patrol officer to put her in handcuffs. Sergeant Garza somehow decided to arrest her, put her in handcuffs, arrest her, and then have her taken to the police department, put in a cell at the old police department, which if you've ever seen that cell, I wouldn't put my dog in there. It was never sanitized properly. a human being being in those old cells. She was in one of those cells for the first time ever because Garza illegally arrested her. She has zero criminal record. So he decided to have her put in handcuffs, had her arrested. And then once he's realized, once he's done with it or whatever, he decided, cuts her loose. And then after that, since I was the primary officer, him and Holt called me into the office and tried to get me to force me to file charges against her. She was a victim of a shooting. She did nothing wrong. They didn't even Mirandize her. That's the most illegal thing a cop could ever do, in my opinion. There's a lot of horrible behavior to do, but when you arrest, ladies and gentlemen, when a woman her house is riddled with bullets while she's cooking for her kids, she opens her garage door, she's thrown in handcuffs, next thing you know, arrested, and these cops are threatening her with crimes, threatening that they're gonna call CPS, scaring her when she's literally a victim of a shooting. Then they called me into the office, I refused, and I articulated in my police report. After that incident right there, I said, Garza developed probable cause to arrest the parents. And he never wrote his report. And I know that he didn't write his report because they were never served any paperwork. They were never charged. So that's the most unconstitutional, illegal thing you can do, is arrest an innocent mother, a victim of a shooting, throw her in a cell, search her house, do everything you want. Like we have zero laws, zero constitution, zero statutes. Then kick her loose and then try and force someone else to follow charges. And then when they don't, just move on, scare her, say, oh, I'm gonna call CPS, scare her. So that's another portion of my complaint. So I follow the complaint. So what I want the citizens of Selma to understand is that I came here with good intentions. I'm a whistleblower. I won't take it, I was would have, like I said, literally done anything for the city. Okay, the next portion I have is I guess I just want to talk to me a little bit about just the sadness of, missing Onyx. My lady of 14 years is pregnant, so I'm beyond a dog. I admit you guys won. You took me to the bottom, took my career away because I refused to file wrongful charges and because I filed a complaint. You guys won. I'm not going to be a canine handler anymore. My only hope is now justice and truth. I'm not here begging for my job back. I'm begging for the Mr. Hines investigation to be reevaluated and redone by a police department, because paying the city tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of city money to use Mr. Hines to investigate. I hope in the end, the superior courts, find this unconstitutional. Hiring, and when I'm looking at the records I received, all the public records, Mr. Hines and Garza just going back and forth for 4 or 5 months, or not, maybe not 4 or 5 months, excuse me, weeks or up to months. Back and forth, just adding up the charges. So when I was put on leave, we started with 2 or 3, and then it went to 13 or 14. And the only allegation that was thrown out was by the city, which I am thankful for. I got one thrown out in this process, was not wearing an example to the citizens of the allegations against me was I wasn't wearing my OC spray or my taser. And Sergeant Alejandro Alvarez testified at my last conference, and he showed up and he didn't have his taser or his OC spray on. So I was thankful that the city threw that allegation out. against me. Other than that, nothing has deviated from Mr. Hines' report. I would also like to plead out to the citizens of Selma, for support. At the end of the day, my career in Selma ended because I refused to file wrongful charges and because I expressed a complaint. And I'm pleading out not to the council but mostly the citizens. And when I think about my journey in Selma, the 4 years or so, I'm not bitter. I can learn from every experience in my life. I'm gonna learn as much as I can from this. And I wish the city well. But I'm pleading out to the citizens, to reach out to the council to reevaluate their decision. And lastly, a couple more things. Like I said, I'm at the bottom as far as I can go, that you guys took me as far as you can go, as far as an administrative investigation. But I have to just know that I pray and hope, and I will continue working for a criminal investigation into Garza's illegal arrest. It's felony crimes that Mr. Hines cannot just dismiss. You don't have the right as the council or Mr. Hines or an attorney. You don't have the right to dismiss felony crimes. Police agencies get sued for millions of dollars for even detaining someone for 15, 20, 30 minutes longer. We have horrible behavior. And so, yes, okay, one last thing, sorry. This is gonna be the last thing I have to talk about. And this was from my original complaint that I sent to Garza, and I finally got this email. Mr. Hines, he purposely left out about seriously 40 to 50 documents related to my case that were so important. And I finally get them after. It was in my original complaint to Garza way before Mr. Hines was hired. The whole premise of Mr. Hines' investigation was, I filed a complaint after Mr. Hines was already hired. No, now I have the emails. I expressed a desire to file a complaint the day I was served the Fresno County Sheriff's Department Internal Affairs memo. That's the day I filed, and now I have everything documented. So the last thing I want to talk about was which was something that was most important to my heart was obviously after the last things we talked about was a sentence in my first complaint talking about Canine Pasco. Okay, so we all know Sergeant Holt. Canine Pasco, is he on duty or where is Canine Pasco? Okay, so as I was a canine canine handler, I believed in different things like the dog sleeping inside, the dog being in a kennel inside your house, love and affection, companionship, the foundations that anyone else treats a dog with. So I saw horrible things with Canine Pasco and Holt. He would kick the dog, hit the dog, put the electrocution to the maximum voltage. I'm going to describe a scenario right now. He has zero control of the dog. He was so scared of the dog, and the dog was so violent that he was so scared of the dog that to get the ball away, you've never heard of something like this. He was so scared of the dog biting him because of the behavior I'm going to talk to you about. To get the ball, the reward toy away from a dog, he opened the police door, hang the dog with its neck over hang the dog with the neck over the door until he would almost pass out. And so he had that barrier where he wouldn't get bit. He would leave the dog in the cage for weeks, not take the dog on patrol for weeks. There was a story that I'm sure you guys are well aware of where Holt sent the dog on a handcuffed prisoner that they let escape. The dog ends up biting a citizen. So I observed Holt punch the dog, kick the dog, isolate the dog, mass electrocution to the dog, neglect, no exercise, no walking, all of the things that cause a violent dog, Holt was doing to that. So that was another portion of my complaint. And once Holt got promoted to sergeant, what are we gonna do with Canine Pasco? We have a dog that's literally out of control and will attack its own handler, but Holt's getting promoted to sergeant. Okay, we're just gonna put Canine Pasco with a patrol officer that's never been with a dog before. How did that go? Officer Chacon, Jonathan Chacon. Chacon has the dog for a week. Chacon walks the dog. A kid's dribbling a basketball and the dog goes insane and almost trying to attack Chacon. He can't handle the dog. So what happens? Well, according to Sergeant, and I'm going to be digging into this now that I have the, according to Sergeant Alejandro Alvarez, Canine Pasco, okay, at Canine train, excuse me, let me go back first. Out of nowhere, Canine Pasco is taken with Jay Brock, the trainer, and Chacon got a new dog. What happened to Canine Pasco? According to Sergeant Alejandro Alvarez, he went to a sanctuary, an animal recovery place in a state up north. So that was another portion of my complaint, was the abuse of care. And today, and I've seen social media posts and I've talked to people who, you know, the new dog that Chacon has, I've heard him called Pasco. You know, that, to my knowledge, that dog's name is Jay as well. That's not Pasco that's on patrol anymore. So I would like to know, and the city should know, what happened to Canine Pasco. You know, did the abuse that Holt put on that dog for years, the isolation, lead to him, God forbid, being euthanized because of Holt's behavior and he got promoted to sergeant? Please inquire, citizens, on the status of Canine Pasco. Citizens and council and others. I want to quickly just relate my case, just kind of dive into this for a second before I'm done. So I'm 31, first generation police officer, you know, a minority of one sort or another. No law enforcement in my family's history. And when I wanted to be a cop growing up from a young kid, you know, I always did right to be a cop for 31 years. No criminal history, no. Navigating all through with the, you know, same story as everyone else. Single mother, you know, that went to 10th grade, no father, blah, blah, blah. Everyone, you know, we all have the same stories in America, that type of story, you know. And I always told myself, okay, I'm never going to take the easy route. I'm always going to be a leader. You know, I'm always going to do my actions where my head will be held high. So you know, my head is still high. You know, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, I'm sorry I did this or that. No, it's a matter of retaliation. It's a matter of false allegations. And it's a matter of, that's basically it. So, anybody who's had an interaction with me when I was on patrol, thank you. All my memories are lasting in Selma. I have no ill will towards anybody. And just moving forward, if we can in the future, guys, if we ever get the chance to promote 5, because I knew that Selma Police Department was gonna stay in the same rut when you guys did that, when whoever decided this action right here. When Mr. Hines did all his investigations to fire the whole last administration. The same guy, all those folks, I'm not gonna mention names. Yeah, so basically, yeah, I'm done with that. But basically, yeah, I'm just saying farewell, guys. Thank you for listening to me. And I hope the citizens reach out, just knowing, like I said, no criminal history. This doesn't have to do with anything criminal. It's the only people against me have been attorneys, administrative police, people like the chiefs, the commanders, no patrol, no citizens ever. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought earlier and I got it back. When Selma went to hire all of these new positions and you just promoted Serta, Holt, Fain, this 5 people, you didn't even bring one person in from another area. And then you get a chief that went to Parlier and who came here, who worked here as well. So we're not going forward. That action right there told all the patrol officers, hey, we're okay with this. And what's been done to me sends an astounding message to other patrolmen. It says, shut your mouth and do what you're told. Because every now and then you see a George Floyd type case where it's viral, but most of the time it's cases like this, where if a cop doesn't shut his mouth, file those charges, don't file a complaint, don't try to make the city better. It's mostly situations like this. So I thank you guys for your time. I pray for all of you. I pray for peace. And I'll praying for the citizens of Selma mostly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Good afternoon. Thank you, council, for hearing me. Just want to start by saying that I don't know why Mr. Mitchell has shown up today to say these things when it appears he's given up on his job. And that seems all been clear since the beginning. If he's going to accuse the chiefs, he's going to accuse command staff of being supremely corrupt and incessantly calling for a criminal investigation against the Selma PD. Obviously, he doesn't want to work here anymore. And the way I started this appeal off saying to the hearing officer, and let's just stand back a minute here. What you have before you is an advisory decision from a hearing officer who has no connection to the city of Selma. She has no connection to Mr. Hines or anybody else who's allegedly so corrupt and out to get Mr. Mitchell. She heard his testimony and testimony from other witnesses over 3 days, and she decided that he is no longer fit to be a police officer with the city of Selma. It's not that he's a bad guy. Nobody's saying he's a bad guy, but he's just not right for the city of Selma, especially after what's been done. The complete ripping of the fabric, the accusations, the baseless accusations against the decorated officers of this department that still today also put their lives on the line for the city of Selma. And I started off this hearing saying that, Mr. Mitchell had to be terminated because he cannot admit when he's wrong. He just can't. And you cannot move forward with an employee like that who cannot admit when they've done something wrong and won't move forward. And still today, he sits here in front of you and accuses Commander Garza of corruption when the facts of that case, I mean, I don't want to get into names. He already said them. That's fine. But they show up at this place and the first person there is Officer Mitchell. And the guy who was just involved in a shooting, and yeah, maybe he was on defense and his house was being shot at. The guy had a firearm and was involved in a shooting and lied to Mr. Mitchell's face. Said, I don't know. I didn't hear any shots. I don't know anything. Right? Lied to a police officer. Another officer comes down the road and gets a little more suspicious than Officer Mitchell and actually does start investigating this person. They find a gun on the ground. They find a known violent gang member inside the house. Once the people are cleared outside, so we have the guy who was outside, he said he was drinking a beer, barbecuing, and I think that's what was happening. They find a gun under the car outside, which the guy had tossed when police showed up. They get the adults out of the house. There's still children in the house. And they go inside the house and find another gun on the table in reach of those kids in the house. And Garza, what he did was he went in that house and searched the house incident to arrest. This is an exigency. This is basic police work. And still to this day, Officer Mitchell comes in here in this public hearing and tells you guys that he's corrupt for doing that. Okay? He just doesn't understand the job. He doesn't know what he's talking about still. And he's sitting here making public accusations against a long-term decorated employee of the city of Selma. And that's why the hearing officer sustained this termination. That's why you guys should sustain this termination. That cannot stand. That was there was actually 12 charges against Officer Mitchell. Some of them he admitted, the minor ones, like, yes, he didn't have his shotgun loaded at all. He had loose shotgun shells rolling around in his car. He had Commander Garza's binder for a couple years, things like that. And the hearing officer sustained all of that because he admitted it. But the hearing officer said, you know what? I got her words here. She says, an officer who acknowledges his mistakes and is subject to training and correction could possibly remain an effective officer following these infractions. There were some things that he did that she said didn't require termination. If he admits that he's wrong, get him some training, get him some instruction, move forward, that's fine. However, there were other things that he did, which as I described it, tears at the fabric of an organization. What he did was when he was accused of misconduct, he just reared back and started striking out at everybody, accusing everybody else of corruption, severe corruption, right? Like I just talked about with Commander Garza. And that the hearing officer said, you know, these are the ones, and she sustained those charges too. The fact that he made baseless accusations against Garza, against Holt. He made baseless accusations against somebody from another department, against Alejandro Alvarez, one of the city's officers. Baseless accusations. And he says nobody has ever investigated his complaints. That's the basis of that charge against him. He never complained about these things. All of a sudden he's subject to investigation and starts lashing out and accusing everybody of everything. And we investigated all those things. He made a formal complaint. We investigated them all. And not only were they determined to be false, but retaliatory. All right. I mean, this case he's talking about with the guy drinking a beer in front of his house, that happened in like 2019. And he didn't complain about it until he was under investigation years later. This thing that he just talked to you about with this canine Pasco, okay, that happened years before. He never said anything about it before. And then he gets under investigation and he tells Garza, I want to make a complaint about canine Pasco and the abuse I witnessed. Eventually, he didn't even make that complaint. That wasn't investigated because apparently that wasn't important enough for him. It wasn't important enough when it actually happened, right? Apparently he saw a dog being choked by another officer and never said anything. And now he says it here 3 years later, right? And that's how all of his complaints were. And he says today that Commander Garza wouldn't take his complaints. we have the emails. He tells Garza the day he gets his administrative IA investigation with the Fresno County Sheriffs, he immediately starts complaining against his supervising Sergeant Holt. And he tells Garza, hey, I want to make a complaint against Holt. I'm going to talk about how he abused his canine and all this stuff. And Garza didn't shut him down. Garza didn't refuse to take his complaint. We eventually, when he made his complaint formally, we eventually took it. Garza never denied him any opportunity like that. And there's another case that he was investigated for complaining about where it was the same thing. He had this issue back in 2019 with Holt, his acting supervising sergeant at the time. And he complained to Cannon, Sergeant Cannon, now Commander Cannon, and Cannon told him, hey, are you wanting to file a complaint on this? Because you can, or if you just want to have a discussion with me, I'm available. And he says in his formal complaint years later that the Selma Police Department tried to bury his allegations and refused to take his complaint. It's just not true. He made a complaint that we had a relationship that violated the city's nepotism policy because one of our sergeants was supervising it's like his wife's cousin or something like that. And I tried to point it out in the hearing saying, hey, this is not a violation of the city's policy. This policy is in writing. It's right there. It tells you which relationships are not allowed to be occurring in the department. And it's very clear that the relationship that exists is allowed under the policy. And he just refuses to acknowledge these things. He refuses to acknowledge he's wrong. Garza is something like a 25-year officer. He knows what a sweep incident to arrest is. And yet Officer Mitchell cannot bring himself to admit that he's just wrong. And that's what we're dealing with. That's what the hearing officer saw. The hearing officer's final language, which I'd like to just read real quick. I think she's spot on here. The appellant, Mr. Mitchell, is an intelligent man. He speaks and he writes well. He cares deeply for animals. He cares for people in justice. I hope that he will move on to other employment where he can feel more comfortable and trusting of his fellow employees, and the workplace will be more harmonious. And I think that's astute. I mean, the guy's not a bad guy. I don't think he's right to be a police officer. The hearing officer didn't feel so either. And I think that's why you sustain the hearing officer's advisory opinion, sustain this termination. Thank you.
I think up to council, but I think you can give Mr. Mitchell an opportunity to rebut one last time. You can limit him to time if you'd like to as well. Up to you guys.
Mr. Mitchell, would you like to come back up and give your final words? You have 3 minutes to do so. Okay.
Thank you again, citizens of Selma. I just wanted to say a couple of things. Just the first is the reason why the issue about Canine Pasco never made it to my complaint was after I expressed that, once that email was written, I went to a canine conference with Reedley Police Department, and I drove by myself to that conference. Sergeant Serta and everyone was insistent upon me meeting them later. I showered, went to dinner by myself. They were all in a hotel room and they wanted me to meet up with them. Right when I walk into I didn't really want to do that. I was fine by myself. Right when I walk into the hotel room, the sergeant from Rivera, the canine sergeant from Reedley, Sergeant Rivera says, "Hey, it's Snitchell." He calls me Snitchell, and this is just a couple days after I just, expressed my desire to file a complaint about Canine Pasco. He says, "Hey, it's Snitchell." And I honestly felt so threatened by that I just wanted to leave the canine stuff out of it. At that point, I felt so threatened by being called Snitchell. And I have a lot of family members with that name. I don't have that name anymore, but I do have, and nobody's ever heard that name, Snitchell. Hey, it's Snitchell, right when you walk in the room. That, and then just, also I want to, he's saying, he's referencing the Mr. Hines report and decorated officers, like I said, I expect the council to do the right thing, say, hey, this is retaliation, this is wrongful charges, false charges, you can't put someone on leave for one thing and then blow it up to 13. All the things I was accused of, officers still do out there today. But that's basically was it. And just thank you guys, and also lastly is just, I look forward, as most people know, I do have, litigation in the Fresno Superior Court, just like he said, he's referencing Mr. Hines' report and the arbitrator, the fire chief and the hearing officer. We have shown foundation in the Superior Court towards our lawsuit, expressing with, I'm a whistleblower, it's retaliation, it's false claims. And, we have showed foundation in the court, and we do have a trial coming up in February. We are on calendar. So thank you guys. And thank you, citizens of Selma.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
You guys can close the open session hearing now, and then we can move into closed session.
Okay, we'd like to close the open hearing and go into closed session.